the language was a shock where I thought I spoke the Queen's English, right?
Mhm.
Kenya is a British colony, and so my English back then is completely different than what it is now. I still recall the first time going to a bank teller and wanting to withdraw whatever, 25, 30 bucks, and the bank teller just had this glazed over look and had no idea what I had just said. I thought I was pretty clear, and I
Oh
tried
yeah.
to. And so now being able to speak a language and connect with people from across the world is not a nice to have. To me, it's one of the more important things that you
Mm.
should have. And if you have it, it certainly opens doors. And for me, it opened doors absolutely professionally, without a doubt.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here in this Speak to Talk podcast. Our main goal is to not only help you to develop your language skills, but also to connect with other people in our communities and make this world a better place and a most peaceful place so we can all live and accomplish our goals. Today, I'm honored to welcome my friend, Mr. Arnold Nakaha. He's an executive leader with deep experience in global revenue growth, international market expansion, and also he's a multilingual, multicultural. He has a lot of skills. So that's two of the things that I really admire in him is that his ability to be multilingual, multicultural in the way that he leads other people. Arnold has an experience as well, helping organizations scale revenue, build high-performing teams, improve customer experience, and navigate major transitions across fitness, technology, and health and wellness networks. He is known for his clear leadership, straightforward communication, and hands-on approach on the way that he builds systems, develop people, and create predictable revenues and results for companies. Thus far, he's been one of my best friends, my whole time friend. And I met Arnold 22 years ago when we were going to school in Idaho. And today we'll explore his journey, his perspective on leadership and culture, and also how language discipline and global experience can open doors to greater opportunity and impact. Without further ado, Arnold, welcome to the Speak to Talk podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing well. Thank you so much, Hugo, for that warm introduction. And hello to the Speak to Talk audience. Look forward to getting to know you and hopefully contributing something to the ecosystem.
Thank you so much. Well, before we get started, Arno, for people who don't know you from your own words, how would you describe yourself? Tell us a little bit more about you and your journey in the leadership world, because you've been so impactful in the moments that I met you. You have this charisma and also the ability to really help people to grow. So before we start talking about the language skills, how to learn new languages, your journey across language and cultures, how about we get to know you a little bit more, I don't know. Would you explain a little bit?
Yeah. I'd be happy to. Well, again, thank you, Hugo. It's a pleasure being here. Hugo and I go way back to the days of college in Southeast Idaho. So I'll perhaps take a step back to where it all started. I'm originally from Burundi in Central Africa, and I grew up mostly in East Africa. I had the great pleasure of having parents that actually, at the time, traveled quite a bit in various roles, government roles for the most part, and spent a lot of time across East Africa, Central Africa. And so that sort of shaped the person that I became today. I cannot speak about the Arnaud of today without referring to the Arnaud of yesterday. So, long story short, I graduated in Nairobi, Kenya, speaking English, but my whole life really spoke French and Kirundi and Swahili. When I went to Kenya, I spoke English, and then that's then that I decided that I wanted to go to school in an English-speaking country. And so I explored all kinds of countries, including South Africa, Kenya, Bangladesh, all parts of UK, Canada, and the United States. And I landed in southeast Idaho in a small city called Pocatello, Idaho, a small state college called Idaho State University. My original intention when I went there, Hugo, was to the big dream for me was to work on Wall Street.
Mm.
And so I went to school for finance, got my degree in finance. And just as life happens, it never happens the way you planned it. I was hit with, everybody was hit with the WorldCom and Enron scandals. And that was really a bad time to be an accounting and finance professional. So I had to make a pivot. And there happened to be a company that was there in Southeast Idaho. That's where we started. I started my career about 22 years ago, which is where I had the great fortune of running into Hugo and his then newly wedded wife,
Yeah.
Megan, in Rexburg, Idaho. And since then, we've never looked back. I've had the great pleasure of not only operating in business, but being able to use my international background to help companies and put some fingerprints on a few companies that I've been a part of over the past 2 decades.
Wow, that's amazing, Arnaud. So you've been, it's impressive how many cultures you've been exposed to. And can you tell me a little bit more? Because there's a lot of people they follow this channel that they want to know if you're an immigrant coming to the United States, tell us a little bit about your personal experience, going through Idaho. What was, do you think, the skills or the circumstances that helped you to navigate through that transition? Because it's not easy for someone from Burundi, right, to go through all these and then come to the United States with English as a foreign language and then adjust to that environment, that new language, new people, new culture, new weather. I remember when I went to Idaho the first time I saw the snow coming to my face. I was like, "Holy cow! I didn't know that that was a weird sensation, right? When you see the snow coming from the sky, you're like, wow, I've seen that in movies and stuff. I never seen in person. So tell these folks out there, this is so exciting to talk about this because it's so, it's awesome. So in your experience, and how was it like arriving to the United States and getting accustomed to the culture? What helped you? And what advice would you give to new people coming to different countries, not just the United States, but all over the globe? Like we're living in this transportation economy now where we all adjusting and moving from one place to another and communicating and adjusting. What was your experience and how do you think the new folks immigrating and changing, even within the same states in the United States, they may find value in your advice as well. So tell us a little bit more about your experience, please, on our you.
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned weather. That was my first sort of shock. It wasn't a culture shock. It was a climatic shock for me, where I landed in the middle of December, going into January, and so the only place that I had seen ice or something that looked like ice or snow was in my freezer, and so I had never experienced snow, much less the fast winds and the rough, cold weather of
Yeah.
Pocatello, Idaho, Southeast Idaho. So that was really my first shock. I packed, the biggest coat and jacket that I thought I could muster from Nairobi, Kenya, and it turned out it was
Wasn't
as
enough.
good as of a t-shirt, maybe, or a light jacket. And so that was my first shock, right? The second shock was the culture. So the language. Let me
Mhm.
reverse the language. The language was a shock where I thought I spoke the Queen's English, right?
Mhm.
Kenya is a British colony, and so my English back then is completely different than what it is now, and
Oh yeah.
Hugo can attest to it.
Oh yeah.
And the I still recall the first time going to a bank teller and wanting to withdraw whatever, 25, $30, and the bank teller just had this glazed over look and had no idea what I had just said. I thought I was pretty clear, and I
Oh
took
yeah.
took my time. Didn't understand a word that came out of my mouth. And so I said, okay, I've got to figure this out one way or another. So a defining moment for me was I was fortunate that my first roommate was from Zimbabwe in Southern Africa. And he had been here for probably about 2, 3 semesters, longer than I had been. And so he became sort of my first mentor into understanding the lay of the land. And so I remember it was a Sunday and called my family and just was relaxing, watching football or whatever. And he told me that we need to go to this meeting. And it happened to be a networking meeting, a college students networking meeting. To which I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to some meeting to meet strangers, right? And so he forced me. He did not give me a choice. He said, "You are coming with me, young man," in a thick Zimbabwe accent, that is. And so that was a defining moment because when I joined the meeting, and it happened to be an African Student Association meeting, various students from across Africa that happened to be going to Idaho State University, that opened my eyes to the importance of a network. I needed to find my network and to grow my network. Remember, I came from Nairobi, Kenya, originally from Burundi. I did not know a single soul in Southeast Idaho. And here I was starting my adult life with really nothing to fall back on. And so I learned through that experience that you have to put yourself out there. You have to be uncomfortable. It's going to be difficult at first, but the more you do it, the better you get. The more people understand you, the more you understand them. And I had to dig into sort of the travels that we did throughout my childhood to understand that people are people. Language might be different, the culture might be different, but we all love our family. We want to take care of one another. We, for the most part, want to be supportive and helpful, and we look out for one another. But the only way you can find that out is putting yourself out there. And so that's what I did, Hugo. Through that experience, I joined multiple different groups. I joined some professional fraternities, Alpha Kappa Psi. I was involved in student government. It culminated in me being the College of Business senator and having the most votes. And if you had told Arnauld landing in Pocatello, Idaho, freezing his tail off, not being understood by anybody, that I would have the chance to represent a whole College of Business, I would have laughed in your face. And so that sort of was difficult at first. And I'm speaking to you as someone immigrating to insert whatever country. It'll be a bit difficult, especially if you don't have any backing or background or understanding of the lay of the land. And the only way to immerse yourself is to immerse yourself and get to know people. And that's what I did, and it served me well, well beyond my experience as a college student.
I love it. You made me remember something, Arno. You glad your experience was with the bank teller, right? With me, I was already 27, right? Everybody's like, this guy needs to get married. And we go to this restaurant where everybody brought their own dates, right? And the culture in there, once you in these ages or when you come back from your mission, you getting married. I'm like, oh shoot. And then we had this situation. I have this girl that, they hooked me up with that girl for that date and I could not. I thought I spoke English because I took 2 years of, when I came with an economics degree. So I took English 1 and English 2. I'm excited I can speak English. And then I go in front of all these people, at the table. You're like 6 couples. The thing is, everybody's talking to their own date, right? It was a group date. The girl could not understand a word I was saying. And she's talking, and I'm like, what's she talking about? Spencer was my friend, right? From Idaho. Spencer, what is she talking about? He's like, Hugo, come on. I'm on date here too. I ordered a second plate of food so I can gain time,
Uh-huh.
eating while people is talking and stuff. I was so lost because the English is completely different in Idaho versus, British English. And I could not understand everything. I understood, some context, but I was very, very nervous. So you're a blessed man. You got your experience with the bank teller. I got with my first date.
That was one of many. That was one of many. And you sort of have to, I think adapting is the key,
Yes.
right? And here's one other thing that I found is um, the language is even different. I
Mm,
was fortunate to travel within the United States.
yes.
My first big trip was to New York City and getting into a New York City cab. I did not understand a word that the cab driver was saying, right?
Hmm.
And I was giving general directions. And then I went down to Louisiana as one of my first trips for work. And they couldn't understand what I was saying. I could not understand a word they were saying, right? So
Mhm.
you go even within the United States, there's different accents, or within Latin America, you go to Mexico and then you go to Argentina, you go to Colombia and Peru, the accents are different, right?
Yeah.
Or you go to the Caribbean, completely different. And but the gist of it is this: find common interest.
Yes.
Find things that connect you. And I guarantee you're going to get together and learn from one another. One of the most beautiful experiences that I had was playing soccer. And you remember we played soccer,
Oh yeah.
football for most of the world,
Yeah.
soccer
Yeah.
here in the United States. And it was sort of this mosaic of cultures. You know,
Hmm.
you had some Haitians, you had some Kenyans, you had
Latinos.
the only Burundian, you had Latinos from all over
Uh-huh.
Latin and Central America. You had some local folks from Eastern
Yeah.
Idaho. I mean, it was a beautiful thing. Just the other
Right.
day, I ran into one of them 20 years later. He recognized me. I recognized him, and we sort of reminisced that,
Yeah.
of that time. That was such a beautiful time where sort of this collage of people from all over the world and different cultures were all linked by one thing. And that happened to be soccer at the time, but it could be a number of things. It could be,
Yeah.
your love of business or culture, language, arts, music. I mean, there's so many things that tie us versus separate us.
Hmm.
It's a matter of us just opening up and finding what that is. And you'll find that there's plenty of things from across the world that connects you to anybody, anytime.
That's beautiful, Arnold. So basically, what I got thus far that I really think a lot of people need to take notes is number one, find a mentor, like your friend, someone that can guide you and direct you. I had the same thing. His name is Spencer Fulmer, great friend. We actually met in Portugal, and he invited me to come to the United States with him to try the United States. And it was it was an amazing experience. He was my mentor. I'm so blessed, and we still friends, like really good friends still today. Find a network, network yourself, be everywhere, like you mentioned, get yourself involved in all the associations and like community organization things. This helps you. And finding also commonalities. This I love that because I was one day, I don't know, talking to a guy, very very centralized in his way of thinking. He's like, man, Hugo, I can make friends with these people here. I said, why? We don't have anything in common. I said, what do you mean you don't have anything in common? Your father, this person might be coming from a different country, but you guys are fathers. That's a lot in common. People spend 24/7 in a family. You guys don't have anything in common just because you're black, he's white, and you know what I mean? Like, there's gonna be something in common. Religion. What do you believe in? Are you Christian? Are you Muslim? Are you what? There's gonna be something. Where do you live? Experiences you had before, just regular. Like, did you go to college? Everyone has at least one major thing in common that can unite us and connect us. So I know before we talk about leadership skills. Since Speak to Talk uses languages skills as a way to build, communication and bridge gaps across cultures, what do you think has helped you the most? First of all, let us know, if you would, the languages you speak, because I know you speak French, you speak French, Spanish, English, right? And Swahili. If you speak other languages too as well, if you might add, what helped you? What techniques or experiences helped you to get to know different languages? Because in the United States, especially, a lot of people think, "Oh, shoot, learning a new language is so complicated. I can't." But growing up, in different places, learning a new language is part of what you just do for fun, or it's like it's awesome. Like, it's a term of endurance when, like, oh wow, he speaks different language. We all want to speak different language. I learned new language first time. I would just go to the library, get newspapers in French and start reading it. And then my aunt said, wow, this boy, I was like 10 years old, this boy got something. So she paid me, French school for me, Centre d'enseignement du français in Sao Tome and Principe. And that's how I started learning French, my first foreign language.
Mm.
So in different cultures, some countries, I don't know how many different dialects Burundi has, But Angola, for example, these guys have like 12 different languages in one country, right? So, but in the United States and some countries, in Europe, for example, it's not very common that you see a lot of people speaking multiple languages. More Europe is more than the United States for sure in that traditional learning different language because of the European Union, especially. But what was your experience, Arnaud? What was your experience and what worked for you? And what do you think might work for some folks that want to get some advice from you?
Yeah, so two of the languages, I have a very, very strong written, spoken understanding and control of the language, right? So that's actually three, pardon me, English, French, and Kirundi, right? So I started speaking Kirundi when I was born. It's the official language of Burundi. French, I basically K through 12 was all in French. I went to a French school. And then English, I have spoken for now more than 50% of my life, right? So those are sort of the three that I have a very strong control and command of. The other two, and perhaps some tips, are Spanish and Swahili. Okay. So with Swahili in particular, I've always migrated wherever I am to people from East Africa. It's really the unofficial East African language. And so number of my friends happen to be, from Kenya, from Tanzania, from Burundi, from Congo, Rwanda, and we speak that language. So I keep that one up by just speaking with them every day. And you will find ourselves really talking in two languages, English and Swahili, back and forth. Spanish, I only learned from going to school and taking classes, whereas Swahili I learned from just living in Kenya. So Spanish is the one that I would say is my most difficult to command. And what I have done is, again, everywhere I go, including with Hugo, I will speak Spanish. I will force myself to speak it. I can write it, I understand it 100%. Speaking it, the vocabulary, the grammar, I have to put myself out there, right? So wherever I've been, I've always networked with Spanish folks, whether it is someone that I'm working on a project with, a coworker, a business colleague, I'll always put myself out there and it feels uncomfortable, right? But you do that. And I love that you were reading newspapers. One of the things that has helped me gain better control of the language is listening to the news in Spanish or listening to podcasts in Spanish. And so I can't tell you how helpful that has been. Just personally in everyday life, meeting people, really in my city where I live and working with them, or professionally being able to be an asset to a company. So those are the two ways that I've continued sort of ironing, my language skills.
You touched a very important point, Mia, because uh, when you look back, you look, okay, all these people we graduated, in my case, first economics and then business development. And, you know, we can be graduated from a nice college, but especially in business, to me, what made a huge difference, what took me into expanding and living in different Latin American countries was one key differentiating skill, my Spanish.
Mm.
And to you, Arno, I think was your French that got you into working for this amazing Western Idaho and company and took you into this person professionally that you are with so many exposure out there for in Canada, Latin America, United States. You've grown so many, new leaders across all these decades that you've been working in what you do. Do you also agree with me that language was a key factor that made you different than other people, or changed your career in ways they wouldn't?
Yes, and not in the just in the way that one might think first, you're the only one that speaks French. To me, what language has taught me is that you take an interest in people, you take an interest in a language and a culture, and so that expands your mind. That really
Yeah.
does expand your mind, and I think it connects, a few synapses in the brain as well, where it helps you think critically, it helps you think on your feet, it helps you, relate to people as well. But absolutely, it's an asset, especially in this world that is being compressed. Whereas, I mean, you look back 10, 20 years ago, the world was this huge place, whereas
Yeah.
now, with everything being so global, it comes
Yeah.
all together, right? And so now being able to speak a language and connect with people from across the world is not a nice to have. To me, it's one of the more important things that you
Mm.
should have. And if you have it, it certainly opens doors. And for me, it opened doors absolutely professionally, without a doubt.
Yeah.
My ability to speak French opened all kinds of doors. Not only that to get in the door, but then also grow within your career or your community or whatever your calling is,
Mhm.
has been tremendous for me personally, and something that I advise everybody. Matter of fact, I believe in it so much that my own kids go to a language immersion school. So 50% of the time they're learning in French, 50% of the time they're learning in English,
Oh,
and that
nice.
includes math, science, arts, literature. Yeah, you name it. They're learning these sort of more specific topics in
Mhm.
these languages so that they can use it. And then beyond that, I truly believe in exposing my children to other cultures and other languages,
Yeah.
and getting any chance that I get, I will get them out of sort of, the bubble that one lives in. Wherever you are, you're living in this bubble, right? In
Yeah.
this ecosystem that is controlled. And so getting them out of that comfort zone is something that I believe in, and for the future of our kids as well.
You mentioned something that really hit me when you said strategically. You said two things thus far that I want to kind of dissect a little bit. One is when you mentioned about your ability to speak okay. Yeah, your ability to speak, Spanish versus, because of the way probably you learn Spanish. Or I want to kind of dissect that a little bit more. Why Swahili, English, and other languages you can do much easier? Because that happens to a lot of people. Like they learn the language, and when it comes to speak it, there's something there,
Yeah.
and it's part of our program as well to kind of debunk that situation. But with other languages do not happen the same to you. And there's going to be a secret in between these two worlds. One that you don't freeze, you don't think too much, you can read and and everything, but when it comes to speak, there's something there. And by on the other ones, there's no issue. I've seen you speak. I mean, you speak in English now, you speak French, like you can walk on water in French, like Swahili, all these languages, you master that. But there's one in the end. What's the reason? And the
Yeah.
other one is on immersion concept. When I came back to the United, I mean, when I came into the United States, that's why, because I went to ISU, I wanted to take a master's program. It wasn't for me because I wanted to. People was asking, why did you take a second bachelor's degree?
Mhm.
Because if I'm coming to the United States, people speak English here, but my economics background and my post degree in economics, regional economics in Portugal, even if I just learned English, I would not make it. I'm telling you. So I said, you know what? Let me go back again and start taking from ground zero, take the a degree, but in English. You know what I mean? Like I had to take my degree in English to feel more competitive in this market than if I just focus on learning English. I would not make it. So that was my strategic mindset at the moment, and I'm glad I did it because learning a degree in a language is different than learning the degree in a different language and then just learning the language itself. The technicality, all the specifics that you would get from that language, it would not be as immersive than you actually wrapping both together and learning the degree in the language at least 50%. That was really nice strategy, and I think our listeners out there, you can probably use that for your kids as well. But I don't know. Let's talk a little bit about um, the the languages that we feel so comfortable speaking and the ones that we feel not as comfortable. Why is that?
Yeah.
Your
So,
experience.
um, four of the languages I learned during my formative years when my brain was much more flexible.
Mm,
That's Kirundi, that's French, that is English, as well as Swahili. Pardon me. So, what it did for me is that at a very young age, I internalized sort of the mechanics of the language. Like languages have different mechanics. The way you build structure is different, right? Sometimes it's the subject, the verb, and mix match, right?
mhm,
So the reason why those four or those three come easy, I would say Swahili is in there as well, is because I learned that in my formative years. I was from basically the age of 1 to about 10 or 11, I spoke all those four languages, right? I
yeah.
did not learn Spanish until I was 13 or 14. And at that point, yes, the brain is still flexible. I happen to have a great teacher, which is a blessing. She helped me learn and love the language
Mhm,
and built a really good foundation, right? For about 2 years, after which we moved. And unfortunately, that teacher was more interested in telling jokes than teaching us. And so then I feel like I learned 2, 3 years, I lost 2, 3 years of 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 um of learning Spanish further,
mhm.
which I then caught up once I moved to Idaho and started meeting people from all over the place, right? So that helped me sort of further understand, internalize the language, right? So really that's it. The way that you do it as an adult is you just learn. So for instance, one of the things that I did is I actually got a tutor. It was a lady from Guatemala, and every week for like an hour, we would sit there and just talk, whether it's business or politics or fashion, lifestyle,
Mhm.
current events. We talked, and that helped me sort of um, do it in a controlled environment where, and it was like, $12 an hour or something like that, where you
Mhm.
could learn from these people, right? So that is the reason why, and to this day, I'm still furthering my understanding of Spanish. To answer your second question, your speak to talk community will appreciate this. There's a difference between translation and interpretation.
Yes, yes.
Translation and interpretation are completely different. Translation is you can go to Google Translate or any,
Hmm.
large language model and type in something in Spanish, translate it in English.
Yeah,
Type something in English, translate it in Spanish, right? If you know those languages and you write it and you see the translation, you will see it's a translation. It's not
yeah,
an interpretation.
yes,
Word for words are different language to language. And so the interpretation is so much better than the translation, which
yeah.
is why I applaud the community that you've put together, Hugo, in the
Mhm.
Speak to Talk. I applaud you for investing in yourself for the with the Speak to Talk community because it's going to teach you, yes, the translation, but the interpretation takes you to another level of understanding and connecting with people. And that makes all the difference.
Absolutely, because interpretation is more like you. I remember I was translating for the CEO of this fitness company that we built and grew across Latin American communities in the United States and Puerto Rico especially, and someone was in the audience like, "No, that this word is this." I'm like, "You first of all, I'm doing the interpretation. I'm not translating." I know what he's saying because I'm in the company. I know the nuances, the technicalities, and I know what he wants to say too because I know him. So
Mhm.
sometimes the interpretation is a gift. You should never correct someone who knows what he's doing interpreting because sometimes you can say, hey, I'm going, to the beach. This person may say, I'm going to enjoy my family at the beach. Because you know that the main goal is not just the journey, the physical, geographical journey, but the main goal is what he's gonna do when he's at the beach. So some people's people can stretch it too much, right, and come out of context completely. But there's like a fine line in the interpretation, understanding the culture, understanding what's beyond the just physical translation of the words themselves. So Arnold, thank you so much. You mentioned something that you need to learn and love the language. You need to learn and loving are big components to that, and finding a tutor is really helpful. So we don't have much time, but I would like to ask you, Arno, uh, professionally, what was the most you think the highest rewards you've been receiving from working in such a diverse and multicultural environment to you? What do you think has been the most rewarding experiences or things that you have received from being that vessel to convey a certain message to the world? What do you think it's been?
Well, there is multiple ones, but if I were to boil down to one, it's the ability to learn from people.
Mm,
And I'm fortunate to have been in that position, and language is a big part of why I was in that position. It's meeting people from San Juan, it's meeting people from Montreal, it's meeting people from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, it's talking to people from Birmingham in the UK, it's talking to people from Marseille in France. Being able to jump on a call and connecting with people from, across Asia and Australia and all over the place, knowing that, and I tell this to my daughter, it doesn't matter where you put me, anytime, anywhere, I will make friends. And if your aim is to make friends and make connections and build relationships with people, the language becomes just a little hurdle to get over. And so that's been the most brilliant thing. One of which has been meeting you and your
thank
wonderful
you.
wife, Megan, and traveling the world
Likewise.
together. And this
Likewise.
would not have happened if I didn't have an interest in people and expanding my universe to then find you and now be connected to this Speak to Talk community.
Arnold, this is great. One thing you just mentioned about, you mentioned in your last statement is this love for people. And while I was listening to you, I'm thinking the love for people is really very connected to our desire to learn new languages as well. Because people that love people want to know more people. They want to know how people think. Because language is not just like au revoir, bonjour. It's not just the words. It's like it's a culture behind it. There's love. There's this idea that you want to get to know people, their culture. It's the interest in people that leads people to actually want to learn other people's languages. I don't know if this is how you also feel and what gives you that passion to continue learning new languages because you want to get to know more about these people that you want to learn about them now or in the future, probably. Um, so anyway, that was really beautiful said. It made me think really like there's a direct connection in between you being able to want to learn a new language versus your interest for humans, and their cultures and ways of thinking. Yeah.
So two things. If you were to go back 10,000 years ago, right? We're living in the forest and bushes and savannas.
Mhm.
Um, the primary way to protect yourself is to know who's surrounding yourself. And you had to make a quick judgment of who that person is. If you see someone that looks different, dresses different, maybe, hunts differently than you look at them and you say, is this a friend or a foe?
Mhm.
You have to make a decision in a split second. And that's a survival instinct that we
Yes.
have had. You translate that over 10,000 years, fast forward to now, we still have some of that. When you
Interesting.
think about stereotypes and you see someone that speaks a different language, looks different than you, dresses different, lives in a different country, our our generations from 10,000 years ago, we still have those whispers in our ear of recognizing, is that a friend or a foe? The
Mhm.
advantage that we have now that they didn't have back then is there was really no commonality. There's no language or shared culture. The
Mhm.
advantage that we have now is we can communicate. We can communicate and we can learn more about them, and we can literally break the ice by taking an interest in them. And the way you take an interest in them is asking questions about themselves and where they're from and what their habits are and what their customs are. And what it does for me, and it will do for anybody in the talk to speak community, is you now know another language that opens your world to
Yes.
breaking the ice and getting to know people. Yes,
Mhm.
I'm extroverted, right? I love people. But even if you're introverted, you can do it your own way. And
Yeah.
language just does that. It just expands your world, breaks the ice, and breaks any stereotype that they might have. We can't help ourselves. We're human beings.
Yeah.
And that's the whispers from 10,000 generations ago that are still prevalent now that you break by meeting people where they're at. And that's through language and asking questions and taking an interest in people. And
That's
once
so
you do that,
powerful.
you will find that we're a lot more similar than we are different.
This is
That's
so
been my
amazing.
experience.
Like on the opposite end, you have people that probably might be a little ignorant in the way they think. And by not knowing, because the way you see it, like I've seen you, like, and I've been with you, and I love you. You're a man of strategic thinking. Everything you think about, I don't know, from the moment I met you, is you're a very strategic guy. Not cold, not selfish, just strategic. If you want to be, we have a relationship. You're strategic about your relationships. You reach out to your friends, you send them cards. You know all my kids' names. You're a very strategic mindset person. But people who don't think, and that's, I'm thinking about this dichotomy you make in between 10 years ago versus now, and our human instincts about, how we survive in the environment and all that. And I'm thinking, wow, what about the people who don't think the same? When they see someone that dress differently, talk differently, have an accent, or don't speak their language, instead of having the mindset of learning their culture, about their culture, learning their language to get to know, because knowledge is freedom. That's what Nelson Mandela said. If you want to free a people, give them knowledge, right? Give them education. So if you have the knowledge about that language, because there's so many people in the United States, like about 60 million people in the United States are Latinos,
Mhm.
should we, those who don't speak Spanish, is that a good thing to learn Spanish? Or we start judging them, we start like having prejudice towards them, like barraging them. Is that the attitude, or the attitude should be, let me get to know them more? I have 60 million neighbors. Should I get to know these 16 million neighbors better? And what can I do to connect me with them? Oh, no, I don't need them. So I'm just going to deal with the people that speak my language, look like me. I feel more comfortable with them. By you missing the beauty of diversity and actually have that tool to get to know more about your surroundings and be successful in that way. It's beautiful, Arnaud. So you see, like, it takes us to professions, it takes us to different leadership exposures and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's just part of us being more connected and also helping people, besides the professional part that also helps us. Everything is interconnected. Arno, this podcast is so diverse. I know that your wife is from the United States, right, Jessica?
Mhm.
And for folks out there that want to know a little bit about, you know, the difficulty of living and being successful. I'm not saying that, my wife is also from Washington. She's from the United States. I'm not saying that marriages are perfect, but they're interracial marriage. That's what I want to talk about.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that they're perfect, but they can be always better. In your experience, for people who are out there, our audience, we have a lot of multicultural people, multicultural marriages as well.
Mhm.
What do you think has been something that has helped you in languages? For example, with your teacher, you mentioned two things. Was you had the passion, and she had the passion to learn and to teach, and there was love, was the language in the way that that relationship developed. But in your marriage, what do you think? Because the gap, when I got married, I thought, oh, I love my wife. she loves me. We share the same values, same religion. Oh, piece of cake. Well, 2 years later, I was hit with a rock in the head. You know, you guys, you knew me and you thought everything was great probably from the outside, but we were struggling in our first 2 years. When she got pregnant, she had a baby, and then she was going through postpartum depression. I didn't know that she was going, it wasn't a deep depression, but it was a postpartum different moods that she was living at that moment. The pregnancy was also difficult for me to deal with her mood swings. She would cry. I'm like, why would you cry? Because in my culture, if you see your wife crying, something is wrong, so you got to fix it. You got to go and help fix the situation. What's going on? Let's fix it. And I would come home sometimes and she would just be crying. I say, Megan, what's going on? She would just cry and say, I don't know. I was like, what do you mean? I don't know. If I did something, come on, tell me. Because I haven't done anything. I'm like,
Mhm.
she's like, it's not about what you did. I don't know what's going on. And that would make me upset. Because why would you be crying? Not upset with, don't cry, but I would be sad. I was like, what's going on? Like my wife is just crying. I didn't know, because I was a young father. So there are so many components, and then you have the different differences in culture, differences in language. You say something, and then the intonation, like from my voice, my diction coming from different languages, they don't sound the same in English, like native English speakers. And she had to adjust as well to understand, oh, Hugo is not mad. He's just conveying something with passion or whatever. And we had to navigate these waters, and it was hard. Later on, wow, it was beautiful because it was hard.
Mhm.
In your situation, I know, to our audience, and hopefully we can save some marriages out there. Who knows? Or help people start thinking, right? And start conversations out there about this. Tell me a little bit more about your experience in things that you could share with us that can help some folks out there, would you?
Yeah, I would tell you that 18 years in, going on 19 years, I'm still learning. She's still
Yes.
learning. We're still learning, right? So, interesting that we're having this discussion now. We're getting ready to take a big family trip to Burundi,
Oh, wow.
and there's lots of questions on, okay, what's this, what's that, what's expected, what's not, et cetera, et cetera. So, I would say, I'm no marriage counselor or a relationship expert. I
Yes.
think that, it takes work and it takes both of you communicating, and there's going to be, peaks and valleys like any relationship, whether it's a romantic, relationship or a business relationship. I would say it boils down to communication and always, doing it with sort of the background of love and understanding. And yeah, to this day, we're still learning in our style of communication, what is expected, what adds, I guess more more sazon, as people from Puerto Rico say, is different personalities too. I happen to be very extroverted. She's introverted, right? I happen to love being out with people and connecting with people and learning about people. And she would rather, stay home and looking to the universe and the galaxies and
Yeah.
learn all the things that there is about science and human beings and all that. So, I would say if I were to boil it down to three things, I've said the first one is communication.
Hmm.
Um, the second one is being proactive and understanding each other's needs, right? And trying to cater to that as much as possible within the complexity and difficulty of life. In French, they say la vie est exigeante,
Hmm.
which basically translates to life. Life is difficult.
Demanding.
Life is a challenge in itself, right? And trying to live it together with children, in an environment that is not always conducive to that could be difficult. But ultimately, lastly, it's reminding yourself and each other the covenants that you took and doing the work that it takes to continue maintaining that, right? I think what has helped us is also being curious about one another, and that's sort of the fourth one is being curious and being open to learning about each other's needs, right? And that involves some uncomfortable conversations, you
Mhm.
know, and listening to listen, not listening to speak. And I'm pointing the finger at myself here
Oh yeah.
is sometimes my mind works faster by, than my lips are saying things. And so
Mhm.
listening to listen versus listening to, to speak definitely makes a difference. And every day is a new day and
Yeah.
enjoying the adventure and knowing it's going to be an adventure. It's not going to be this cookie cutter sort of experience and
I
unique to every single relationship.
I love, I don't know what you mentioned, like, communication, being proactive and being curious, and attentive of each other. I remember one occasion, for example, I was talking to my wife and she's like, Hugo, because I was giving suggestions about what do you think about it? She's like, Hugo, I don't need any suggestion. I just want you to listen. I was like, shoot, that's different than corporate America. We,
Yes, it
we
is.
know what I mean? We just like, oh, we're solving all these problems. We're dealing with all people in these countries that we're growing these businesses in these countries. There's always, fire to put off and stuff. But our spouses, they just want someone to listen.
Mhm.
And it's so critical that we can be actually able to, just listen. One thing that helped me a lot, I know as well, is an advice that I heard from one of our, big leaders. He said, in marriage, you don't give your 50% and expect the other person to give the 50%. You give your 100%. And you talked about covenants that you made, like you make the covenant with that person for goods and bads. And sometimes the bad is the person is just in a bad mood, or the person is thinking something different than you, want to do a different direction. They're free humans just like you are. And that's what makes the marriage beautiful and at the same time hard in that communication, number one thing that you mentioned, right? Because each person is their own entity and they're making this beautiful covenantal entity together.
Mhm.
So, how do you think, Arnold, differences in culture has affected that relationship? And you guys are such a beautiful couple, and I want to thank you for your examples. And so, what do you think culturally has shifted or give, I don't know, tell me more about the component of different cultures that you guys live, because her family, from a trip that you and I had in Bahamas one day, we were talking about, no, what's the Dominican Republic, that was a, we coincided over, you and I were talking, you talking about her parents, like you coming into this new family. There's this guy from Africa, I've been in there too, like, and then you start noticing, oh, wait a minute, the cultures are different. I'm not just coming from a different nationality culture, but I'm coming into a different family culture as well. Sometimes we don't think about that. You talked about our personalities, right? The way, so we have our personal cultures, we have country cultures, regional cultures, and now we're having family cultures that might be different as well. How did you navigate through that? Any experience you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so in business, they usually, or in real estate, we always talk about underwriting the deal.
Hmm.
And underwriting the deal is doing the research on a deal, whether it's a single family home or a multifamily, apartment that you're wanting to purchase. And I'm boiling it down to business terms to explain what we did, Jessica and I. We underwrote each other, right? Before sort of taking that next step, we had a lot of discussions about everything from religion to language to race to where we want to live to what we want to do with our lives, our careers, our aspirations, our fears, our hopes. We had a lot of those discussions. And one of the things there's a lot of things, but one of the common points of interest was the values that each of our families had. And
Mhm.
that served as the structure within which to build a foundation for our lives, right? So having those discussions, even if they're uncomfortable, even if they seem difficult, was extremely helpful
Yeah.
for both of us to understand kind of where we're coming from, and that sort of helps become the anchor, through all the winds of life, whether it's
Mhm.
moving, new job, new children, postpartum depression, the good and the bad, all the things that happen within a life and a relationship. And so that served as the common ground that we established. Like we had to have those conversations even before meeting each other's families. And that turned true because when we did meet each other's families, yes, it was different culture, maybe different language, but there was a lot of common points of interest that we can build from. Because
Yeah.
once you have that, the understanding and the love of the of each other's families on her side and on my side both, right?
Yeah.
It's a two-edged, it's a two-edged sword, if you will. That helped us sort of go and look at things through that prism of, remember, we really come from different places, but we have a lot of similar values.
Yes.
And even through some things changing, because the person that I was 18 years ago is certainly not the person that I am today. And same, for my wife,
Good Lord.
is you learn how to navigate that and you keep reminding yourself, you have the covenants, but also the foundation that you build and continue to build together. And so that makes it simpler, not necessarily less harder, but it makes it simpler
Yeah.
to operate from that standpoint.
That's awesome, man. Because yeah, we go through so many situations in life, and our spouses, they're there with us, and when you have all these diversity and all this stuff, and then you add life situations,
Mhm.
it makes things. So I don't know. Let's shift a little bit back into the professional world. You mentioned real estate. You're a mass entrepreneur. I've always seen you with this mindset of entrepreneurship. So just to kind of conclude our conversation, I have two more questions for you. Is one is how do you think people like they have different backgrounds, immigrants, etc. How do you think they can navigate the corporate America in the best way possible? First, you mentioned about you being successful and using mentors, for example. That was one of the things that you use, but coming into the country itself. But now we're talking about moving and being successful. You've been the vice president of Team Beachbody, one of the top fitness companies in the world, in the planet. So how do you think people like you, like me, coming from these backgrounds, how do you think they can be successful? What tips would you give them to be successful in a workplace? Or like you, for example, we also have different businesses. How do you think they can be good entrepreneurs, good leaders in their careers?
Yeah, so I'm gonna stay away from giving universal truth. These
Sure.
are my truths. These are sort of, I guess, case studies that have helped me um, navigate the corporate world. So I'll give a few that come top of mind. The first one is within the work environment, you're working with other human beings that have a story, that have a life, that have hopes and dreams and fears, just like you do. What I have found helpful is to know them outside of work as much as possible. Find
Mm,
some common interests. I still remember we used to play soccer together
yeah.
in Rexburg, Idaho. I got to know you better that way. Going to various restaurants and getting to know people breaks down the ice, right? So that has helped because the friendship and the relationship helps them understand who you are on a deeper level besides sort of the corporate lingo and the corporate
Yeah.
infrastructure that sometimes can be quite robotic, right? So that's one thing that has helped. The other one that has helped me is once you get to a managerial level, is understanding um, I'm going to call it what it is, sort of the politics of the organization, what
Mhm.
everybody's trying to drive. Everybody has sort of an agenda, whether it's operations that is, trying to, purchase, or solidify their supply chain, or finance that's looking at, cost of goods sold and net profit and margins that are trying to cut things, or HR that is looking to expand the talent pool, maybe bring in some new fresh blood and talent from universities or other, professional environments, is doing the homework before key meetings. So if there is specific meetings and you are wanting to advance an idea or project, right? Meeting with the other stakeholders even before the meeting and running some of those ideas by them,
Mhm.
not necessarily to get, for them to acquiesce and align with you, but more so to give them a heads up of what you're trying to introduce, has been very helpful because it saves time, it saves hassle, right? And it increases understanding of where you're coming from while also showing them how they benefit, right? So that by far has been one of the more useful tips that I've been taught that, I would teach, others in my position or in future positions. And then the third one to me would be to understand what ultimately leadership is trying to accomplish, right? And so, ultimately, leadership has its own set of pressures. They're trying to, grow revenue while increasing profitability and reducing cost and all that stuff. And so, if ultimately you're working in a company, you have a boss, the boss has a boss, try as much as possible to gain some kind of FaceTime with leadership, right? And not by going behind, but maybe asking, your boss to facilitate some meetings so that you can get a wider understanding
Mhm.
of what you're trying to do. And I'll give you the last one would be to understand what other departments how they work, right? So I was fortunate that when I was building an international business, I had to work with legal and
Right.
R&D and supply chain and had to work with finance and compliance and so on and so forth. I was fortunate to be in that position. That's because the job required it, but
Yeah.
it certainly advanced my career further by understanding more globally how a company works.
Mhm.
So take an interest, be curious, take an interest. You don't need to be a subject matter expert, but understanding what they go through, their processes, will help fine tune how you approach them and how you build up your projects for the company as well. So those are a few tips that have been helpful for me.
That's awesome. And do you think these tips are, because you mentioned four, right? Know outside, know people outside the work environment, get to know them as humans. You see, everything is interconnected. Your purpose of learning new language to get to know new people is also being applied in your work environment because you want to get to know people. These are the people you're dealing with. Some of them you spend more time with some family members probably.
Yep.
Get to know them, and then you have understanding the politics. The meeting before the meeting. That's so important, right? So what leadership wants and what other departments want. Are these things like in order? Because, for example, if I don't know, I think this one is very crucial in basic. Like, if you don't know the people you're working with, probably if there's no trust, there's no relationship, they may not want to meet with you before the meeting either, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, do you think they all work interconnected or they can work isolated? Or if you want to have the
Yeah,
best
I
of
think that the base of it is understanding who people are
Mhm.
ultimately, and what they like, what they don't like, what moves them, and you don't get to pick all the time who you're going to work with, and you're
Yep.
going to work with people with various degrees of understanding of the company or seniority within the company or different personalities, right?
Yeah.
Just because I'm extroverted doesn't mean that everybody will be, and so
Yeah.
understanding how they work and who they are, I think it's at the basis of everything. That
Wow.
is the most, by far, most important asset that you can build for yourself and your career.
Arnold, I've seen you doing so many things so well. It's incredible. So in your career right now, you as a professional, so you mentioned the real estate, right?
Mhm.
You're also an entrepreneur in real estate. And then what else are you doing right now? Because it's been a while that we haven't had this conversation. Professionally, what are you doing right now? And how do people find you? And what kind of services are you providing to people right now? Or things that you can share, of course. And also looking, if you and I die today, right? Looking at that perspective, what do you think you want to leave for the next generation? So what are you doing and your purpose, your why? If you die today, you look from another world and say, oh, you know what? This is what I did.
Yeah.
What do you think would be that you'd leave for the next generation?
Yeah, so I'll start the first one. So I'm a curious person. I've got my hands in a lot of things. So like you said, I am involved in real estate. My wife and I, that's one of the blessings is that we get to do it together. We manage and run short-term rentals across the
In
United
the
States.
state of Utah, right?
It's across the United States.
Oh,
We're
wow.
in all country, all states. We operate in all states.
Okay.
So we do manage short-term rentals. Some of them our own, and some of them for others. My wife has a skill set like no other in designing and staging and furnishing properties. So that's been a blessing, a side project that we get to do together. So that's one. The other thing is I've taken interest in artificial intelligence. I landed here in the United States the 30th of December 1999. And if you recall at the time, there was Y2K. It was the
Hmm.
advent of the internet and,
Yeah.
shopping online and online stores and pets.com and all these, craze around the sort of the dot-com industry. And
Yeah.
obviously, we know what it's done for humanity and for us.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I was so green that I did not fully take advantage of that. And at the advent of I think I would be remiss if I didn't say how important artificial intelligence will be across the world,
Yeah.
regardless of where you're watching this from. It's a crucial tool that you want to learn how to use. And so one of the things that I do is I have a passion for teaching other people how to leverage artificial intelligence, how to leverage the various tools to help them in their everyday lives and work and jobs, etc.
So
Right?
you're
So
doing,
that's
is this something you're doing as a consulting perspective? Is that a consulting that you're
currently I'm
doing?
doing that as a consulting
Oh,
practice, yes.
okay.
And sort of focusing on both small to medium-sized businesses, but individual users as well, right?
Okay.
I love talking about that because that's kind of where my passion lays right now. And so that's where I am. In terms of where you can find me, you can put my Instagram. It's Arnauld Nakaha. On Instagram, it's Arnauld Nakaha. On LinkedIn, those are my two primary platforms where I share and post. I'm on YouTube and Facebook as well, but those are
Yeah.
the two primary ones.
And LinkedIn
And
as
then
well, right?
LinkedIn as well as Instagram, yeah.
Yeah.
And then in terms of legacy, I kind of, when you asked that question, the first two, three people I thought about is, obviously my wife and my kids, right? And so to me, I like focusing on what I can control,
Yeah.
which is how I prepare my kids for tomorrow, the values my wife and I teach them, the tools that I give them, the heart that I give them for people, the love of languages and culture and wanting to make the world a better place where they are, wherever they're going to be. And ultimately, them knowing that we're doing all this for a reason, and the reason is to leave wherever you are better than how you found it. And so, in whatever capacity, discipline, career that you are involved in, that's really my legacy. That's where I see sort of me putting fingerprints in this big, wild and wide world.
Yes. Arnold Nakaha, welcome again to this podcast. I say welcome again because I know that this is just the beginning of many other interviews that we may have with you. Some might be just in the AI industry, some might be in the real estate industry, some might be in other things that you're so good at. And I really love and respect and admire you for what you're doing. If someone wants to get a hold of Arnaud, like you mentioned, you can follow him on Instagram, LinkedIn, and he's in all social medias basically. But LinkedIn is where you can, I have better communication with Arnaud usually when we're talking professionally. Look at his last name; you're not gonna find as many people with the name Nakaha. So anyway, Arnaud, it's been a pleasure being with you, and thank you again for your time and your dedication.
Likewise, thank you everyone for tuning in. I look forward to connecting with many of you in the future.